I moved into apartment 4B on a Tuesday, and by Friday, my neighbor had borrowed sugar 3 times. The first time, I thought nothing of it. I was unpacking boxes, trying to figure out where my coffee maker should go, when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find this guy, maybe late 20s like me, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes that were this incredible shade of green. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and jeans, and he had this apologetic smile that made something flip in my chest. "Hey, I'm Marcus from 4C, he said, gesturing vaguely down the hall. "I know this is super random, but I'm trying to bake cookies and I'm completely out of sugar. Any chance you could spare a cup?" I invited him in, stepped over half-unpacked boxes to get to my kitchen. "Sure, no problem. I'm Jake, by the way." "Thanks, man. You're a lifesaver." He leaned against my counter while I dug through a box labeled kitchen stuff in my terrible handwriting. "Just moved in 3 days ago. Still living in Cardboard Box City, as you can see." He laughed, and it was this warm, genuine sound that filled my small apartment. I remember that. I moved in about 6 months ago. It gets better, I promise. I found the sugar, poured some into a container I handed him. Our fingers brushed during the exchange, just for a second, but I felt it like electricity. He must have noticed something in my expression because his cheeks flushed slightly, and he quickly stepped back. "Thanks again," he said, already moving toward the door. "I'll bring you some cookies when they're done." He didn't bring cookies. But 2 days later, Sunday morning, there was another knock. I'd been sitting on my couch in sweatpants and an old college hoodie, drinking coffee and finally feeling like my apartment was starting to look like a home. I opened the door to find Marcus again, this time in running shorts and a tank top, slightly sweaty like he'd just gotten back from a jog. "I am so sorry," he said, and he genuinely looked embarrassed. "I know I already borrowed sugar from you, but I'm making pancakes and I apparently didn't buy enough last time I went shopping. I promise I'm not usually this disorganized." Something in my gut told me this wasn't about sugar. The way he shifted his weight from foot to foot, the way his eyes darted to mine and then away, the slight nervousness in his voice. But I played along. "Come on in. The sugar's actually unpacked now, so this'll be easier." He followed me inside, and I noticed him glancing around, taking in the details of my space. The books I'd arranged on the shelf, the framed photograph of the Oregon coast I'd hung above the couch, the rainbow flag pin on my backpack that hung by the door. "You have good taste," he said, nodding toward my bookshelf. "I love that author." We ended up talking for 20 minutes about books, about the neighborhood, about the best coffee shop within walking distance. He was easy to talk to, funny and smart, and I found myself not wanting him to leave. When he finally did, sugar container in hand, I stood at my door for a full minute after it closed, wondering what the hell was happening. The third time was Wednesday evening. I'd just gotten home from work, was loosening my tie and thinking about what to make for dinner when the knock came. By now, I knew it would be Marcus before I even opened the door. And sure enough, there he was, wearing a button-down shirt like he'd also just gotten home from work, looking sheepish and hopeful all at once. "Let me guess," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Sugar. I know. I'm the worst neighbor ever. But I'm making this recipe my mom sent me, and it calls for sugar, and I thought I had some but." "Marcus," I interrupted gently. "I walked past your apartment yesterday. Your door was open and I saw inside." I paused, watching his face. "I saw your pantry." His expression froze. We stood there in the hallway, the air between us suddenly thick with everything unsaid. I could see the panic starting to form in his eyes, the preparation for denial or excuse or retreat. "You have at least 3 bags of sugar in there," I continued softly. I could see them from the hallway. He opened his mouth, closed it again. His face had gone red, not just his cheeks but his whole face, down his neck. He started, then stopped. "Why don't you come in?" I said, stepping aside. He hesitated for just a moment, then walked past me into my apartment. I closed the door behind us, and we stood there in my living room, facing each other. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was stupid. I shouldn't have." "Why did you do it?" I asked. I needed to hear him say it. He looked at the floor, at the ceiling, anywhere but at me. I'm not usually." "God, this is embarrassing." He ran a hand through his hair, took a deep breath. "I saw you moving in last week. You were carrying boxes and laughing with the movers, and you looked so, I don't know, happy, alive. And then I saw you later that day, and you had this pin on your backpack, and I thought maybe. He trailed off, finally meeting my eyes. I wanted an excuse to talk to you, to get to know you, and I panicked and said the first thing that came to mind. And then it became this stupid pattern, and I didn't know how to stop. The vulnerability in his voice, the raw honesty of his confession, made something crack open in my chest. I'd spent so much of my life being careful, being guarded, protecting myself from rejection and disappointment. But standing there, looking at this beautiful man who'd borrowed sugar 3 times just to have a reason to see me, I felt something shift. I'm glad you did, I said. He looked up sharply. What? I'm glad you knocked on my door. All 3 times. I took a step closer to him. I've been thinking about you all week, hoping you'd come back. Really? The hope in his voice was almost painful to hear. Really? Although I have to say, your excuse was pretty transparent. You're not exactly subtle. He laughed, and some of the tension broke. I know. I'm terrible at this. I haven't. I mean, I've only been out for about a year, and I'm still figuring out how to, talk to guys I'm interested in. You're doing fine, I assured him. Better than fine, actually. It was sweet. Weird, but sweet. So what happens now? He asked, and there was something so earnest in his expression that I wanted to kiss him right then and there. Well, I said, pretending to think about it. You could borrow some sugar. Actually borrow it this time. Take it back to your place with your 3 other bags of sugar. He smiled. Or you could stay here. We could order dinner. Talk more. Maybe watch a movie. No sugar required. I'd like that, he said softly. I'd really like that. We ordered Thai food and sat on my couch, close enough that our knees touched. He told me about growing up in a small town in Iowa, about moving to the city for college and never leaving, about coming out to his family over Christmas last year. I told him about my own journey, about the years of confusion and denial, about the relief of finally accepting who I was. We talked about work, about dreams, about the weird guy on the 3rd floor who sang opera in the shower loud enough for the whole building to hear. Somewhere around 10 o'clock, during a comfortable silence, he turned to me. Can I tell you something? Anything. That first day, when you opened the door, I almost forgot how to speak. You were even more attractive up close, and you had this kind, open expression, and I thought, this is it. This is what it feels like when you meet someone who could matter. My breath caught. Marcus, I know it's fast. I know we just met. But I believe in moments, in recognizing something important when it happens. He reached over, tentatively, and took my hand. This feels important. I laced my fingers through his. It does to me too. We sat there, hands intertwined, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Like we'd been building toward this moment through every borrowed cup of sugar, every shared smile, every word exchanged in doorways and living rooms. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice rough with want and nervousness. Instead of answering, I leaned in and closed the distance between us. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of us feeling our way through this new territory. Then his hand came up to cup my face, and I deepened the kiss, and suddenly there was nothing tentative about it. It was heat and desire and the sweet relief of finally acting on what we'd both been feeling. When we pulled apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Wow, he whispered. Yeah, I agreed. Wow. He stayed until almost midnight. We kissed more, talked more, existed in that beautiful bubble of new connection where everything feels heightened and possible. When he finally left, standing in my doorway with his hand still holding mine, neither of us wanting to break the connection, he smiled at me with such warmth that I felt it down to my toes. So he said, can I see you again? Without the sugar excuse this time. How about breakfast tomorrow? There's a good diner 2 blocks over. It's a date. He squeezed my hand, then let go. Good night, Jake. Good night, Marcus. I watched him walk down the hall to his own apartment, watched him turn back to look at me before he went inside, both of us grinning like idiots. Then I closed my door and leaned against it, my heart still racing, a smile I couldn't suppress spreading across my face. That was 4 months ago. Now, Marcus doesn't need excuses to come over. He has a key to my apartment, and I have one to his. His toothbrush sits in my bathroom, and my favorite coffee mug lives in his kitchen. We've fallen into this easy rhythm of domesticity and romance, of shared meals and lazy Sunday mornings, and conversations that stretch late into the night. Sometimes, when we're lying in bed together, his head on my chest and my fingers running through his hair, I think about that first knock on my door. About how a simple request for sugar changed everything. About how sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you want something, even if you have to disguise it as needing something else first. Last week, I bought a 5-pound bag of sugar and left it outside his door with a note, for emergencies. He sent me a photo of himself laughing, holding the bag, with a text that said, "The only emergency I have is how much I'm falling for you." I texted back, "That's not an emergency. That's just us." He showed up at my door 10 minutes later, let himself in with his key, and kissed me until we were both breathless and laughing. "You're right," he said. "This is just us. And it's perfect." And you know what? It really is. Sometimes the best things in life come disguised as simple requests, as borrowed sugar and transparent excuses. Sometimes love knocks on your door 3 times before you realize what it's offering. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you're brave enough to let it in. Total_char_count, 11,473.